Every situation you're in right now that is painful, that is getting you mad, that is frustrating you, all of these are opportunities to call you into your own awakening. Hello and welcome to the Experience of the Soul podcast. My name is Cynthia Alice Anderson. I'm the host. I'm also lovingly known as RCA. I'm here in the studio with Mr. Sean Kilgore, my producer, and we are having a great time as always. I'm not sure why, friends, but when I come on to the show and you can hear that I'm smiling, it's because he's just made me giggle.
It's like a good challenge for me. Like, can I get her to laugh right before we start?
Well, there's been those two times. It takes so little. And then those two times I could not stop, laughing. Yeah. But friends, welcome to the show. We're happy to have you along the journey with us. It is a great, great day. And Sean is going to give us this week in spiritual history. Yeah. Over to you, Sean.
Thanks. Hey, welcome everybody. This is episode 422 of Experience of the Soul.
Wow.
We're continuing with our Free Your Soul series, and today we're talking about awakening. So as RCA said, we are so glad that you're here and joining us. Thank you for being here. Today's conversation, of course, is all about awakening to a deeper awareness of ourselves and the world around us. But yes, first we are going to, as always, take a look at what's happening this week in spiritual history, and otherwise we like to sprinkle in some other observances here as well. So first up, this Sunday, July 26th, is the International Day for the Conservation of the Mangrove Ecosystem.
Love that one.
Yeah, me too. I thought this was really cool because I just got back from a little vacation, a little trip to a barrier island off the coast of Tampa, and we did a sunset dolphin cruise. And one of the things we went by was this beautiful mangrove, and they told us all about how that kind of ecosystem is really crucial. And I mean, it was just like birds as far as you could see. Like that's
right.
Really just
beautiful.
Awesome. So this is an established observance that was made to raise awareness about mangrove forests and the important role that they play in protecting the coastlines around the world. So mangroves actually help reduce erosion and provide this great habitat for wildlife. They improve the water quality for where we live, and even store large amounts of carbon. Which is so funny that, I experienced all that on this little tour, and then this came up as like one of the observances for right now. So
yes, and recently I was boating into a mangrove. So there you go.
Nice. Look at that. We're meant to be talking about
I still have a stick to remember the
nice.
Yeah. To remember the accident. It was so fun.
That's awesome. So most of us will probably never spend much time thinking about mangroves, but they do quietly do an incredible job of protecting both us, people, and the environment. So this is just a great reminder that some of the most important things in life are also some of the easiest to overlook, things that we just don't even think about, but things that really matter.
They are. You're so right. And when you live in an area like Florida, we're so connected to the natural world here because so many of us are outside so often. So beautiful one.
Yeah. Also this week, Wednesday, July 22nd, many Christians observe the feast of Saint Mary Magdalene. So Mary Magdalene, of course, was one of Jesus' closest followers, and according to the Gospels, was the first person to witness the resurrected Christ. Because she carried that news to other disciples, she's often called the apostle to the apostles. So for Christians around the world, this is a day to remember her courage, her faithfulness, and the important role that she played in the story of the resurrection.
Yeah.
On Friday, July 24th, it's National Amelia Earhart Day here in the United States. The day honors the pioneering aviator who became the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean. Beyond her record-breaking flights, Amelia Earhart encouraged women to pursue careers and dreams that many people at the time, and some people even still today, thought that should be out of reach for women.
Well, I was going to say, with both of those, Mary Magdalene and this, I just have to say a word about the Baptist Church now saying women cannot be pastors. I mean, it is the most laughable thing I've heard in a while from the spiritual world. And I mean, the Southern Baptist Church is already one of the most declining congregations in the country. And now they added that. I'm like, are you trying to clear out your pews? I mean, so much has happened around that. And so many people reached out to me, by the way, being a female pastor, about what do I think about it? And I say what do I think about it? I think that I'm very happy for where I am. Yeah. That's all I'll say. It's like, I don't, it's their beliefs. They have every right to it.
Yes.
Absolutely. But I have a concern because I think the Baptist Church in many ways offered me a wonderful knowledge of the scripture when I went through the Baptist school. So
isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And now they're,
Yeah, it's a very antiquated look at scripture, in my view. And so, they have, the Catholics aren't ordaining women. They never probably will. And I'm saying, I'm not Catholic. So, if you're okay with that and you go to the Catholic Church, that's wonderful. I bless you in your faith, but just if you're also listening to my show, remember, I would never be welcomed as a minister in either of those places. And so, it's like, and that's the reality. A
lot of people out there on the internet that like to let us know that on some
I know some of their
our YouTube videos. It's like, man, you scroll by and you feel that you need to take the time to sit and type that comment about,
women.
About women not being preachers. And it's like, man.
Right.
But so that's why we're so grateful for those of you who take the time to comment.
Nice comment. Yes. There was one person, remember, who said women aren't to wear pants. Yeah. And so I said, all right, well, I'm going to try wearing a skirt for the next 4 weeks and see if it makes a difference. And, it made no difference. I said, this will be fun.
Showing off those gams.
Oh, right. Nice gams. Right. Yeah, exactly.
That's great. So Amelia Earhart, good on you. Right?
Yeah. Bless you.
Yes, wherever you are. All right. And finally, our Just for Fun this week is National Moon Day on Monday. It's today, Monday, July 20th. So this marks the anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landing when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin became the first people to walk on the moon in 1969. It's one of those moments that reminds us what we can accomplish as human beings when curiosity, determination, and a whole lot of teamwork come together. And if you're a non-believer, this is, it's also amazing that a TV studio could do this on the back lot, as well.
Well, I've watched so much about the moon landing, and it is interesting because I love the fact that Buzz Aldrin, the story that was told is that he took the prayer for protection to the moon.
Yes.
And, I always love that story. We have all these photographs and letters and stuff at Unity Village, and Buzz Aldrin, went and met James Philip Freeman, who wrote the prayer for protection and everything. And then 10 years later, I find out probably didn't even happen. But, oh, boy. I was just watching something the other day, too. I'm not sure why I'm going on about it. But as I've done over 8 years, I'm getting more and more comfortable just sharing the bizarre, weird things. But I went down the rabbit hole of did the moon landing happen? And I'll tell you, it's when NASA people say we lost the technology and information, it's just so not believable.
Yeah.
So, hey, choose for yourself. If anybody has another thought about it, let me know. But it's very hard to believe at this point.
Yeah. Anyway, with that, friends.
We digress.
Yeah, we digress. But this is, again, episode.
But aren't we all thinking about that, though, right now? It's like, this is why I wanted to go there, and now we're talking about aliens on the regular. So it's a very, very interesting thing. Yeah.
That might be an interesting episode to try to cover sometime.
Yes, maybe we should do that because there are a lot of thoughts and questions about are aliens demonic and such as that. So there's a lot of information around that. And were there giants on the planet? And yes, I've done a lot of research into all that. So my goal is always to give talks and lessons that illuminate. And some of these topics are very interesting. What my concern about some of them is that it could get us off track to the point of not just living the spiritual journey. But I find some of these things interesting. It was like in that class I did called the Yeshua Dialogues, I talked about the Shroud of Turin, which I had never publicly talked about and had done a lot of research on. And I got a lot of wonderful feedback about that.
That was a great
class. Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe, and past lives also. We've talked about past lives as part of other episodes, but I don't think we've done like a full episode on.
Okay, let's do one called Past Lives, Future Healing.
Ooh, okay.
Let's do that. Past Lives, Future Healing. That'll be after the other two I just sent you.
Okay, cool.
Friends, I'm glad you support the show because we're cranking them out.
Yeah. And if you have, again, ideas, don't forget that there is that send us, but now it says send us fan mail, very top line of the show description on any of the podcast platforms that you're joining us from. And, send us a message. Let us know what would you like to hear RCA talk about, and what would you like to hear us cover on the show? What questions do you have? Or just topics. It doesn't even really have to be a question. Give us some ideas of topics.
Right. And if for some reason I'm not well versed. It was funny. I had one of our supporters and dear friends reach out the other day and say to me, do you know anything about healing using an egg and the chakras? And I said, no. I said, but I'm interested.
Yeah.
I'm interested. So, even if I don't know about it, I said, I love that I'm your spiritual Google, but even if I don't know about it, it might be a pathway or portal into something that is new for me. And I love learning and I love growing. And I've seen and heard things spiritually that would be very, very hard to explain. And I love learning new things. So I loved that reach out. And I said, well, is it voodoo? Is it, I don't know. I said, well, I'm going to check into that. Yeah, that's interesting.
That's cool. Hit me with that title one more time. Past lives and future. I stopped typing.
Future healing.
Healing. Awesome. All right, friends, with that, let's get into episode 422 of Experience of the Soul. Of course, continuing with our Free Your Soul series, today we're talking about awakening.
Yeah. Well, my friends, I feel a little bit like I'm going to tell you, I feel like I'm maturing a little bit. It took me 8 whole years to realize that you are a loving supporter, that you are interested in what I have to say, and that you have a great deal of trust of my spiritual leadership. And I can't tell you what that means, because I have this new sense of peace around the way I teach and what I teach, because I believe it is so grounded in what I call universal spiritual principles. And what I'm talking about today with awakening, I think there is some version of this in virtually every spiritual teaching, because what it really means to awaken, and I did a Google search on this because I thought it would be fun to see what does Google say is the literal meaning, what does Google say is the spiritual meaning. And of course, the literal meaning of awakening is just the physical act of waking up from sleep, right? Or regaining consciousness. And so I thought, well, that I can already tell you what it means spiritually by the literal meaning, right? Because spiritually, we're trying to wake up from the false idea that we are somehow flawed. We are trying to wake up from the idea that we are somehow just our mind. We are trying to wake up to the idea that we are one with all and not a separate soul from others. That we are part of a larger whole that is humanity. We are, yes, an individual soul, but we are connected to all that is. We are one with all. And so I think the main awakening we are trying to do is to awaken to our oneness. To awaken to our oneness with all. And I think many of us, certainly you as our listeners, have told me, you're seeking to live what we call an awakened life. You know, on a very basic level that you are connected to your neighbors. You as our listeners are kind. You are generous. You are even gentle the way you walk through the world. You genuinely care about the plants, the animals, the trees, your neighbors. You care about how you come across to others. You're seeking to be conscious in the way you walk through the world. You're doing your therapeutic work. You're meditating. You're journaling. You're, seeking to live an awakened life. And so we want, as a show, to really help continue to support the work you're doing. And I want to affirm for you that if you're listening to this show right now, you are in a process of awakening. Because in general, that is what all of our shows are about. From the very beginning, we said as a podcast channel, we're seeking to help you grow, prosper, and evolve. To grow, prosper, and evolve without saying the word awakening is exactly what you're moving towards, right? So we're seeking to awaken and tap into the God consciousness. And my friend, in truth, you are one with God consciousness, which is creativity itself. So if you are listening to this show right now, I want to affirm this for you again. You are in a process of awakening. You may not know it. You may not be calling it that, but I want to give you that language so that you can know you are not who you were a year ago. You are not who you were 5 years ago, for sure. I know because so many of you have been in my classes, you've been, my mastermind program, some of my workshops, and I can see the spiritual work that you're doing every week. And I want to affirm for you, you are awakening. In other churches, I want to mention, like when I was growing up in the Methodist church, the awakening I experienced there was to realize I was connected to people around the world, and I learned to be in service there in the Methodist church. In the Baptist school I was in, my awakening was to welcome Jesus into my heart, even though it was already there. That was a moment of awakening to say, I'm going to surrender to this new energy in my life and world. So to awaken really means to live beyond the mind and life circumstance. You awaken to the fact that you are living from soul. And we talked about that last week, right? To move from intellect to intuition was to begin to listen to the voice of the soul. And so living an awakened life means you do this work every single day, that you live from soul, and you will know it because you start to feel more alive. Life begins to flow in a deeper and better way. You are an awake, alive, alert version of yourself. You're not just going through the motions and wondering why life isn't working. And recently I heard of this. Sean, I don't know if you've heard of this, but there is a woman who, I wish I knew her name. We could probably look it up, but I just saw this in passing 2 times recently. A woman who helps men learn how to be good men, to be in a relationship that actually works. And in other words, they've kind of failed at relationship their entire lives. And they finally have given up trying to do it on their own.
And they go to this lady.
They go to this woman and they they pay thousands of dollars to go to these weekends. And what they're trying to do is to awaken, there's that word again, awaken to a new version of themselves. And so that's what we're seeking to do on a very deep level, to live beyond the level of the mind or circumstance. We're seeking to awaken to living from soul. So we talk so much about meditation, and as we awaken into this idea, I want to reaffirm that, we tap into the consciousness of God. This consciousness of God is creative. This is the consciousness that created the world in which we live. As you awaken more deeply, you realize you are a very important part of literally the fabric of the universe itself. And that is, God runs through all of it. And that includes you. And so this piece of awakening, I think when we hear that word in spiritual settings, we often think it's going to be like Paul in the Bible, where we have, Saul to Paul, on the road to Damascus, that we're going to see a blinding light, we're going to fall down, and the next day, everything's going to be perfect. We're going to be living in bliss. Well, if we were in church, I'd say, has that happened to anybody here? Everybody would go, no, not to me. Now, we might have moments where we have these awarenesses, and this is what I want to bring to light, is that I don't want you to have some idea of awakening, that if you don't have like a bright light experience, that you're not truly awakening. But for most of us, I'll say 99.9% of us, awakening is a day-by-day, mostly moment-by-moment process where we learn to choose soul in the midst of life circumstances, that we learn to stop, to not react, and to live from this higher awareness. And that is a moment of awakening. And when you do it on the regular, what happens is you start to live an awakened life. So life does not feel as hard and arduous. You don't feel like, why am I going through the motions and I'm still not happy? Why is it that I have kids, I have a house, and I have 2 cars, a motorcycle, and a boat, and I'm still not happy? You're not there anymore, because day by day, moment by moment, you have been choosing soul. And what you have really done and are continuing to do is to surrender to God, and you are learning to transcend the ego. So what you're really doing is learning to transcend the egoic and personality self. And this takes a great deal of courage and a great deal of surrender on your part. But I want to affirm with you and for you. I know I've said that phrase a lot today. And I've talked with so many of you who are working so diligently on your soul work, and you're doing so much emotional healing, spiritual healing, that I want you to be encouraged that you already are living an awakened life. And the goal is not necessarily to have one experience. It's to be able to choose that awakening in any moment that you have. So that if you have, you're in a work situation where your bosses, you feel being unfair, rather than trying to get in a power struggle or talk to everybody about how unfair they are, you go to spirit and say, how can I transcend my egoic need to be right and move into awakening in this situation? How can I do that? And this is living an awakened life. Years ago, I was in a work situation, and I had just finished ministerial school, and my spiritual practice was so deep, and I was going through so much growth during that time. But I was in a little bit of a tough work situation, and I felt my managers were not hearing me. I felt their expectations were unfair. And rather than, kind of butting heads with them on that, which was, what my personality really wanted to say, this isn't right. What you're doing to all the employees, including me, is not right, blah, blah, blah. I wanted to fight back. And I realized that I was really approaching this situation from the level of the personality, and I prayed for guidance. I mean, we were just talking about that last week, praying for guidance, working with your intuition. And the more I prayed about it, the happier I got. And I realized that no matter what my managers did, the only reason I was there at that job is for me to grow, for me to learn whatever lesson I needed to learn, and to help my soul move forward on the journey. And I asked Spirit for an affirmation. And during that time, the affirmation was, I only work for God. And it was a spiritual position. So I only work for God. And I printed it out, and I taped it on my little inbox. I had a little inbox on my desk. And every day I would come in, and it would be sitting there. Well, one of the mid-level managers came in one day and goes, what is that? I said, what's what? My inbox? And he goes, I said, it's an inbox. What are you talking about? And he goes, no, that affirmation. I said, oh, that's my affirmation. I only work for God. He goes, can I steal it? I said, dude, it's free. Yeah, it's free. I only work for God. And he goes, I get it. And I said, I know you do. I know you do. And I said, I'm praying with you. Because we're all ministers in this situation, And a couple months later, I was still saying this affirmation every day. If something happened, I would just say, God, I only work for you. Let me know when I get this lesson, and so I can be done. I will stay here as long as you want me to stay here. If I'm to try to shine my light, I will. If I'm to stay here for my entire career, if you guide me to do it, I'll do it. And then I was guided, you know what? You need to forgive everybody here, and so you can move on. So this was on a Thursday, and these particular hours were Monday through Thursday. Where this was closed on Friday, so I had Fridays off. So Thursday night, I sat up real late and I did all my journaling. I did Jane Elizabeth's Heart's 7 Steps, and I remember when I finished the journaling, I was like, okay, Spirit. And I threw the page in the air. I said, I am open for a new position. I felt so complete. And the next day, I got a call. The very next day, Unity of Phoenix called and said, we'd like to bring you in for an interview. As a matter of fact, we'd like to bring you on board right away.
Wow.
As one of our ministers. And I said, I just bought a house in Kansas City. And they go, we don't care. We'll pay you to move.
Wow.
I said, well, maybe I could sell my house. And that's exactly how I ended up in Phoenix.
Oh, man.
And so what I'm telling you, the reason I told you that, my friends, is that, and what a great experience I had at Unity of Phoenix, and what another wonderful learning experience. But until I was able to surrender through forgiveness, until I was able to surrender through following my guidance, no matter how it looked on the outer, until I was able to fully surrender and transcend that egoic madness that had me in my mind going round and round and round. They should do this. They should do that. They should. And you know what? They were just being themselves. They were just being themselves. And you know what? Since then, that thing I want to tell you, interestingly, it took about 15 years, but 15 years later, that individual who was very mean, very rude, very unfair, all those things were true, asked for my forgiveness.
Wow.
And I said, we're good. I said, all this forgiven and forgotten. Let's move on. You know, it's okay.
Really nice.
Really nice. Really nice. Yeah. And she said, well, I was, because she started doing consulting, and she said, well, I was surprised that you allowed me in your ministry. I said, honey, we all learn and grow. We're good. We're good. And then she did an incredible job for the ministry. So it's like, if I would have stayed in the personality and I would have hated her and all that and tried to get back at her, and all these crazy things we see everybody doing, and we ourselves have done, it's like when somebody's treating us unfair, of course we want to go, that's wrong. That's unfair. Why are you doing that? Back up. Don't do it. Well, we can't control somebody else's behavior, but we can awaken to God in the midst of this. And this is what I'm saying about transcending the ego. The ego always wants to hit, fight back, say no, blah, blah, blah. I want to be right. I want to prove how wrong you are. And my friends, something more divine is happening. The only reason you're ever in any situation is to awaken to God, for your soul to grow, for your soul to understand from a higher level, what's going on. So I could transcend that madness that was in the third dimension and rise up into a new level. And interestingly, the guy I talked to went on to do very great things. He ended up writing a book, going on Oprah. He did his own journey. Another minister I worked with went off. So we all went our separate ways. We're all living our lives. Instead of having that define us, when at the moment, boy, it seems like that was the most important thing happening. But when you live an awakened life, you can observe what's happening from the higher level. And rather than get so caught up in it, you look for the lesson, you look for the learning, you look for the spiritual awareness, and you do the spiritual work to move out of it and then again transcend that ego need. So to transcend the ego is absolutely necessary to live an awakened life. Notice I'm not saying kill the ego. Notice I'm not saying pretend you don't have one. I'm not Hindu. I don't teach that the ego is evil. God uses those egoic parts, most definitely. But to transcend the ego and our decision making and our emotional nature really is required for us to live an awakened life. And it will definitely support you in making a major shift in your own awakening. It will help you know that you are sourced in God. It will help you know that you are connected with all that is, and that everything that is happening now is to help your soul grow and mature in consciousness. Every situation you're in right now that is painful, that is getting you mad, that is frustrating you, all of these, believe it or not, my friends, all of these are opportunities to call you into your own awakening. But it is you that decides to live an awakened life. It is you that decides when you are willing to surrender to God, transcend that egoic self, and move into the highest aspect of who you are. In the Bible, it's the Christ consciousness. It is all that is. You know, Jesus calls it light. Jesus calls it the kingdom of God. And this is what I believe Jesus was talking about when he says we need to bring heaven on earth, the kingdom of God right here, is to transcend the egoic and personality self and live from soul. So my friends, you are already doing great work. We're waking up from a deep sleep that says we're separate, that sleep that says everyone is against me. Even if people appear against you, God is for you. The Bible says, if God be for me, who can be against me? So my friends, I want you to trust that at a deep, deep level. I want you to trust that you are being supported and that when you decide you are ready to take that next step to move into more awakening for yourself, that God will meet you there. This is my prayer with you and for you. So my friends, thank you so much for joining us today. As always, we're honored to bring you the show. Thank you so much for all your financial support that keeps us on the air. We look forward to seeing you next week, and blessings on the journey.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Experience of the Soul with Cynthia Alice Anderson. If this message resonated with you, we invite you to share it with someone who might need it today. The show is made possible by listeners like you, and we're grateful for the community that keeps these conversations available for everyone. You can learn more or contribute to the show at cynthiaaliceanderson.com/donate. Produced by Kilgore Creative and a production of the Soulworks Group Incorporated. Until next time, take good care.